So in sexual theater, my friend, the longest running play, right, is undoubtedly domination and submission. Right? That's where it's happening. Now, we've talked about, right, how you use domination and submission, right, in the kind of power play, right, between human beings, you know? And so we kind of understand that. You know, Annie alluded to that. You know, let's say, for example, you know, one partner is angry, right, at the other partner. How do they take out their anger? They can take out their anger by playing out domination submission. And have you ever tried that, Annie? Have you ever used that in your relationship to kind of play that out in one way or the other?
Sometimes I do things that drive my husband crazy, and I can see him getting irritated and angry. And if I've done it like 3 times in a day, like one of his favorites is hanging something on a door handle, drives him crazy. And at some point he gets angry, like, you know, this thing's in the way. We have had this agreement where he can take that angry energy and sort of save it up, like accumulate it, and the next time we have sex, we try to have it as soon as possible if he's getting angry. He can channel that anger into the sex, and I take on this role of kind of submissive, sorry, I did the wrong thing, naughty girl. We have a name for that character. Her name's Anne. So when he calls me Anne during sex, I know he's going to bring back some of that angry energy in a kind of theatrical revenge where I'd be naughty, I did the thing that you didn't want me to do, and, you know, he may playfully spank, or he may hold me down with a certain energy of, like, I need to punish you, I need to have my way with you, and this turns me on, this turns him on. He gets to alchemize his anger that would normally make me feel hurt and ostracized if he did it in a normal daily interaction. But when he brings it into the sex, because our animals are connected, I still feel safe, I feel he loves me, and he can still have an opportunity to express his aggression. That's an example of how it works in our relationship.
That's great. That's a great example. Thank you, Annie. And so everyone get that example? Right here we've got a domination-submission game, which Annie and Evan are intentionally deciding to engage, right, which itself gives a way to alchemize this whole world of anger that might have exploded into, you know, a fight that lasts 2 hours, but actually you take it and you pour it in. Actually, in the original Hebrew, the word for struggle and the word for sexual intimate embrace is the same word, because actually to struggle and embrace, right, you're kind of rolling around, right, in bed, and you're wrestling are actually very similar, right? They're structurally similar because they're emotionally and psychologically similar. When you actually weave them with each other, you create sexual theater that actually is transformative, evolutionary, and powerful. Now let's go deeper. Let's go to the next step. This is the form of sexual theater, which is playing out the power struggle between the couple. There's a second dimension, right, of domination submission, right, which is also, right, powerful and compelling, which I want to bring into the space. Now, we're going to talk more about the kind of sex I'm about to describe, right, in week 5 when we talk about the 5th pace of sexing. But because we're talking about domination submission here, right, it's important to bring this other face of domination submission, right, into the game. Let's just talk about it for a second. First, you know, just as kind of a couple of prefatory remarks, and then kind of head into this very, very deep, powerful, you know, spirit version of domination submission. The first, just we need to understand, domination submission is attractive to virtually everyone, right? There's not like some crazy people out there kind of doing domination submission, but it's actually a sexual flavor that's wildly attractive, and in all of the longitudinal empirical studies for virtually everybody involved in sex. Now, I want to just preface, I'm not talking about if you're kind of very, very highly, intensely painful, you know, bondage and submission, sadomasochist activity, right? Not because I have a judgment around it, but because I don't know anything about it. It's not a field that I understand well. So I'm not talking about the infliction of kind of severe pain. I'm not talking about needles in the body. But I'm talking about the play of power relationship. I'm talking about the slap, the tying up, right, the spanking, right, which can sometimes be playful, as Annie said, and always be, it's always, you know, in a context, of course, of trust, right, and of safety. But sometimes it can kind of feel less than playful, right? You can actually bring anger into it. You can bring enormous power into it. But there's always, right, this play of power. Now, that and when we talk about rape fantasy, you know, Nancy Friday, right, you know, made rape fantasy famous 25 years ago and talked about women having rape fantasies, right, and men having fantasies to be rapists. And of course, often they were living in the same house for 30 years and never shared it with each other, big missed opportunity. But actually, it's more than what Nancy Friday talks about. Actually, men, right, also have a fantasy, right, to be taken, right, to be raped. And women have a fantasy of raping, of actually accessing their power, right, and being in that, huge power position, feeling that power coursing through their body. And not only are these fantasies, but actually, and again, we're not talking about, let me just say the obvious. Obviously, all of us on this call hold any genuine form of rape to be abhorrent. Right? And there is no, light rape and heavy rape. All rape is abhorrent, no exception. What we're talking about here is rape which actually becomes not genuine rape, but rape. The rape fantasy isn't that you actually want someone to rape you. It's that you actually have this enormous desire to be taken, right, to be ravished, right, to be ravished open. And so that fantasy, right, the fantasy of being dominated or of dominating, right, exists on both sides in both men and women. And it's extremely powerful, and right, it creates enormous arousal, right, in the sexual play itself.